Hello, and welcome to the Senior Judges Oral History Project. I'm here with the Honorable Frederica Massiah-Jackson.
Good morning.
Hello, Your Honor.
How are you doing?
I am well. Thank you so much for coming and joining us today. We are interested, or I am interested in hearing where you grew up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up here in Philadelphia, North Philadelphia, and when college and law school, I've always been in Philadelphia. So I'm very much part of a native Philadelphian, if you will.
And did you go to Philadelphia public schools, or?
Yes, I went to Masterman School. I think when I got there, it was maybe the second or third year that they opened Masterman. It had been Girls High, and then I graduated from Masterman in 9th grade and went to Girls High.
And at that time, Masterman only went up to 9th grade, is that right?
Correct. There was
Yes.
no high school at that time. So I went right to Girls High for 3 years, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and then Chestnut Hill College, then University of Pennsylvania Law School. And throughout that time, I lived at home, except for my first year of law school when there were new dorms at Penn. And I lived there for a year and then came back home. My parents said, I'm spending too much money to live on campus and I'm home all the time, so I came back home.
And you were also a young graduate of high school, is that right?
Yes.
You graduated in?
Yes, I was 16 when I finished high school, 20 when I finished college, and 23 when I graduated from law school. Yes.
Wow. And did you start school early, or how did that happen? Did you take an accelerated course?
At Masterman, they had a program to do 2 years in one, 7th and 8th grade in 1 year.
7-2? Is that what they called it?
They just called it 2 years
Okay.
in one. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
And then with my birthday in November and whatever, so it just worked out. It just worked out that way. You know, I didn't feel any different or anything.
And did you, what was your major when you got to Chestnut Hill College?
I was political science, and I've always been interested in how the three branches of government work, and that was just fascinating. I would have gone to get a PhD, a graduate degree in political science, but my parents kind of pushed me to be a little more practical.
Okay.
And so I said, and then on top of that, I didn't want to do something that involved too much math.
Okay.
You know? So law school was just right for me.
That's a common story amongst lawyers, no math.
No math, no organic chemistry,
Right.
none of that, you know. So I could write very well. I think Girls High was very, very instrumental in that. We all were good writers at Girls High. Yes.
Girls High has been a wealth of it's been a fountain for the most accomplished Philadelphians.
Well, thank you.
Yes. So your family, you mentioned your parents and how they wanted you to be goal-oriented.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you tell me a bit about your home life?
Sure. My mother was born in Haiti and in the West Indies. My father was born in Barbados in the West Indies. They met in Philadelphia. And my mother's native language was French, my father English. When they met in Philadelphia, you know, the sparks clicked, whatever, and they got married. And my father was a civil engineer and contractor, my mother a teacher. And I'm the oldest of three, and I have two brothers. And so all three of us worked hard and were goal-oriented. And went through school, I think all of us, including my mother, we all have graduate degrees, professional degrees, and you know, we've worked hard, and our parents were very much inspirational in saying that we kept, I guess the word is that we kept focused.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, your parents were both immigrants. Do you think that experience, being the child of immigrants informed how you walked through the world at all, your legal career?
I'm not sure,
Okay.
because that wasn't something we focused on. Neither the parents nor my brothers and I. So our goal was education, and I think no matter who your parents are, you know, wherever they were born, your parents stress education.
Yes.
And so I think that was the best part, you know, just growing up um, and being family oriented. Yeah.
And you mentioned you have two brothers. I know that one of your brothers is a filmmaker.
That's
Is that
correct.
right? And your other brother?
Well, he's retired now, but he was a mathematician, and he worked for IBM for maybe 35 years. But when he got his degrees, he has 2 degrees in mathematics. They didn't have computer science as a major. So when he started at IBM years ago, first he taught for a few years, and then after he got married, he went with IBM and got involved with their computers and whatever it is that they do.
I love how well-rounded your family is. You've got an artist who had a MacArthur
Yes,
Genius
yes,
Award.
yes.
We've got a renowned, well-respected jurist and a mathematician. I mean, your parents really covered they covered the gamut in terms of the fields that their children were accomplished in. So that's incredible. So can you talk about what led you to law school? Was this something that your parents thought you should do, or what made you make that decision?
Well, I was very interested in political science, the 3 branches of government, and my parents did suggest that I find something practical. I knew I didn't want to stop after just 4 years. My job during college was working weekends at the post office.
Okay.
So, and I saw what it was like if for individuals who might not have finished college. I saw what it was like in the real world for individuals who did finish college but didn't go further, and that really helped me, frankly. You know, kind of pushed me forward and said, okay, I got to do something else. So law school was a good fit.
And did you have any mentors in college that spurred you towards the law school route?
My parents, I
Your
guess.
parents, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your college years. Did you have any extracurricular activities in college?
Let's see. I don't think so. I worked every weekend. It was my experience with getting a job. It was very important for the 3 of us, my brothers and I, that we have jobs in the summer, that we have jobs if that would help with tuition or books or transportation. And I lived at home, so I needed the transportation to get to school, lunch money, you know, miscellaneous. So the post office had a program for students back then. They don't have it anymore. And we worked Saturdays and Sundays. So that was a lot of time. Yeah.
That is a lot of time. So that you could say that working was your extracurricular activity. Were you? What made you choose the law school that you chose? You went to University of Pennsylvania.
Well, I was accepted at several law schools, and but because Penn was local, my parents and I, we talked about finances. And really, in the long run, although it was not a cheap law school, the tuition was not cheap by any means, but certainly by living at home, I was able to save money rather than going out of city, out of state, and having to pay room and board somewhere.
And when were you at Penn?
71 through 74. I graduated in 1974.
And were there many black women at University of Pennsylvania's law school at that time?
No, and I can say in my class we had 12 black law students.
Okay.
And I don't remember the breakdown between male and female.
Okay. Were you able to find a mentor at your law school?
I don't know what you mean by mentor.
Okay.
We all worked together. The black law students supported each other and encouraged each other. Every class we Some people found that studying in small groups was what was best for them, white or black or pink or green, whatever the color of the student, it didn't matter. Other people, and this was more my style, worked on my own, and maybe before an exam I would, get partner with one or two other people.
Okay. And after you graduated from Penn, you went, what was your first job?
I was a law clerk for Justice Robert N.C. Nix Jr. on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for 2 years. He had 2-year clerkships. We had 3 law clerks, and we rotated. So when I started, the 2 who were there, they were the senior law clerks. And then when at the end of the year, they left, and I was the senior law clerk, 2 new people came in. And then I, rotated out. So the 3 of us actually are still good friends. We have lunches about once a year, except for these past couple with COVID. But this spring, we caught up with each other again, and it was a very positive experience.
Good. And you, after clerking with Justice Nix, where did you go?
Well, I was at Blank Rome, Klaus and Comiskey at the time.
Okay.
Today it's just Blank Rome. But I was in their antitrust and securities, like subdivision, if you will, of the litigation department. And
it's a pretty big deal.
It was a big deal even then.
Yes.
It was mind blowing, and I learned a lot. The antitrust group, we were working on really an amazing case. It was called the Japanese Electronic Products Litigation.
Okay.
We learned anti-dumping laws. I went to Japan to look at documents. Today documents are on a little flash drive or something. And that time, when we had discovery requests, it was all hard copy, papers, hard copy. And for the products that we were looking at, which were all electronic products, there were rooms and rooms and rooms of documents. So when we went to Japan, our team was 1 lawyer and 1 interpreter. And we'd have maybe 4 or 5 lawyers teams. And we would walk through rooms of documents trying to figure out what we needed, what we didn't need. We would identify them, and then the Japanese defendant companies would send them to us.
With 1 interpreter? He was very busy.
No, each lawyer had an
okay.
interpreter. Yes, yeah.
And what happened with that litigation?
As with so many, it settled eventually.
Would you have been able to sit at one of the chairs, or were you...
I went to the hearings, but I was way in the back. I was not in one of the front chairs back then. I mean, it was my first real job, so it was very exciting. Did a lot of writing and a lot of pleadings, and it was good.
What an amazing experience for your first legal job.
It was very, very interesting. And then at some point, I was asked to work with the state Senate of Pennsylvania. I worked with a senator, Freeman Hankins, who was an African-American senator, I think the second African-American senator. And he was investigating business closings, labor law, and whatnot. And he asked me to be counsel to his committee and counsel to he was also counsel to the Insurance and Business Committee. So I set up hearings for him. I took a leave of absence from Blank Rome. Okay. And I talked to Marvin Comiskey, who was our managing partner, and we worked it out. It was supposed to be 6-month leave of absence. It ended up being 2 years. Okay. And I went all over the state and met with union leaders and other folks to find out. There were supermarkets which had closed without notice to the employees. Oh. And of course today we know that you have to give notice for a certain number of days or months. There was no notice, and people would wake up and find they had no jobs. So we worked on those issues. And then I went back to Blank Rome, And when I went back, I was not into antitrust, it was just general litigation.
Okay.
And then in between, somewhere in there, I got involved in politics, and I ran for judge. And I was elected in 1983, and I started January 1984 as a judge on the Court of Common Pleas. It's been a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Time went quickly also.
You have your experience is so varied. Were those different experiences helpful to you as a jurist?
Oh yes, absolutely. It made my mind flexible. It also, when I started as a judge, I sat in criminal court, so it also made me frustrated because I wanted to get to civil, you know. But when you have 90 or 100 judges, everything is by seniority.
Yes.
And I was at the bottom of the barrel in the 80s. So I spent about 8 years on the criminal side and then came over to civil. And actually I stayed in civil from 1991 until I retired in 2021. Okay. 30 years, I think it is. Yeah.
And you are known by your colleagues, by your fellow judges as a go-to person, as a judge's judge. You are members of the bar have praised you for your willingness to let the attorneys try their cases. And do you think that that has to do with your experience as a litigator? And I mean, how does that factor into how you tried cases?
I'll tell you, years ago when I was elected, Marvin Comiskey, who did serve as a mentor for various aspects of my career, he said to me, Freddie, listen to the lawyers. Let the lawyers say what they have to say, because their clients are sitting in the courtroom, and just let them talk. And I said, okay, Mr. Comiskey. And I suspect that his words are in the back of my head some days, you know. I listen to the lawyers, and it's their case. Their clients are relying on them, and I do try and let the lawyers listen. But I have to say, sometimes when we take a break or at lunchtime or at the end of the day, I bring all the lawyers in the back. And I'll say, you know, I think you should do this, or if you want to do that, or, you know, that type of thing. Sometimes they listen, but sometimes they don't. But I'm usually right. So, yes. What can I say? But, you know, the jury trials, the jurors, they get it right. They see what's going on, you know. And of course, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and, you know, the dog and pony shows. Yes. But I enjoy that too. So I let the lawyers do whatever it is that they plan to do.
Yeah. Well, I know that members of the bar appreciated that about you.
Well, I know they take it seriously. Sure. And I mean, there's so many times I've seen at a trial where you can actually see that an attorney has lost weight during the 1 or 2 week trial on on a big case. You know, their suit is kind of hanging, their face looks very thin, you know, that type of thing. I've seen that. I mean, it's very stressful. Certainly for the clients, but for the lawyers too, because a lot is riding on it.
Absolutely. So you went from ascending to the bar to ascending to the president judge, and there was an election, as I understand.
Yes.
Would you talk about that, or would you be willing to?
Sure. Let's see. In Alex Bonavita Cole. First we had Judge Blake, then Judge Bonavita Cola in the 90s, and then at the end of his term, which would have been year 2000, I believe, there was an election for president judge, and there weren't that many African American judges, but and I have to give credit because, Greg Smith and I have told this story with each other. Judge Gregory Smith and I sat down and we said, we don't think the powers that be are going to let me be president judge, but because I was in the civil division, and I was the first African American woman who tried civil cases in Philadelphia. We had men, Curtis Carson, Larry Prattis, Calvin Wilson. They had sat in civil, but there were no women. And so my aspiration was here to be a supervising judge of civil. And we said, but to do that, it's like any negotiation. Let me try here to be president judge. You know? And we worked and we talked, and we worked with the other judges. They were sure, let's see what happens. And there were 2 or 3 or 4 other people who ran for president judge that fall, and I won. Our rules of judicial administration say that the winner is by plurality. It's not by majority. And I got a couple more votes than the next guy, and no one asked me to withdraw, or no one tried to negotiate so that I would end up being, supervising judge. Sure enough, I won. And it was an amazing time. It was a very wonderful time. But I was fortunate. I had excellent court administrators, deputy court administrators, our prothonotary, Joe Evers. All of us worked very well together, and those 5 years just were a joy. I really enjoyed it. And if we had been permitted to run a second term, I would have run a second term. It was very, very nice. But we're not allowed. The rules of judicial administration just say 5 years. And that's it. Yeah.
Were there any notable crises or any notable accomplishments that happened during your
There's
term?
always a crisis. But you put those out of your mind.
Yes.
So I'll dwell on the accomplishments, which I think was to develop a good relationship with the Bar Association. Mm-hmm. There had been some issues in the past between our Court of Common Pleas, our courts, our first judicial district, and the Bar Association. And I wanted to smooth that over. Back when I was at Blank Rome, I was very active with the Philadelphia Bar Association. I was elected to the executive committee of the Young Lawyers Division back in the late 70s. I was the first, I hesitate to say these, but it's true. It wasn't that long ago, but I was the first woman, African-American woman, to be elected to the Board of Governors of the Bar Association. So I sat on the Board of Governors for 3 years. So I always had a special fondness, if you will, for the Bar Association. I didn't think they were the enemy. So what I feel I did, one of the positives, if you will, while I was president judge, for 4 out of the 5 years, the Bar Association and the courts had projects together. We worked on some major project, and it brought together the bench and the bar.
Do you remember some of the more notable projects?
I know we had one day where a lot of our court employees and the bar, we were at one of the family court buildings, I think, and had speakers and whatnot. I don't remember all the details,
okay,
but I do remember working with the various chancellors of those times, and we just, it just was a good feeling. Mm-hmm. It was feel-good type of things. Within our courts, we had employee appreciation days. Mm-hmm. Up in the law library. Yes. And people would come up there from all parts of the court, not just, because being president judge is not just being the president judge of the judges. I was chair of the administrative governing board, so we brought in all 3 divisions, the employees, probation, parole, staff. We had 2,800 employees at the time, trying to bring everybody together and say, we're one court. Mm-hmm. It's not this court, that, program, this program. It was one court. And so by the end, in 2006, it would have been by the end of my term, I really feel that we did accomplish.
Being president judge, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like being a CEO in some respects, isn't
Oh,
it?
in many respects,
Yeah.
yes. And as a matter of fact, I took a class at Wharton when I first started in leadership, just trying to figure out what did I get myself into. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was very, very interesting time. And then I went back to 2006, when my term was over, I went back to trying cases, which I loved.
Yeah.
And I told everyone, I said, I don't want to be a team leader anymore. I don't want to have any title under my name. I just want to try cases. And that's what I did. It was just a positive experience.
Now, I think you did something that was revolutionary or was really important to ensuring that there is equal access to the law during your term, didn't you?
We had an information center. Maybe I'm.
You've done a lot, so it's hard to.
The prothonotary Joe Evers and I, we worked on setting up an FJD information center down on the first floor of City Hall, so that anyone walking through, the courtyard. I think right now I think they have gates, but at the time, you could just walk through. And we had different languages,
Yes.
and we said, if you have a question, you can file things pro se or get answers to your questions. Also, on the criminal side, the American Bar Association had been talking about the problems, if you will, the inequities for individual defendants, and this didn't have to do with race, but it had to do with economic status. Defendants who had court-appointed counsel for homicide cases. The ABA was saying there should be a second lawyer appointed doing what we call mitigation counsel. And so here in First Judicial District, we picked up on that. The Bar Association, the criminal justice section of the Bar Association, they were very interested in that. When the courts and the bar on that issue, we decided, yes, we're going to have a two-part court appointment system, one for the trial lawyer, because we the courts, FJD at that time, we paid court appointed counsel. All the fees came through the courts. It's different today, I think. But at the time, all the fees came, and we were paying for one counsel. Now we agreed that the courts would pay the second mitigation counsel. That second counsel would be their job to get ready for sentencing. How to mitigate so someone does not get the death penalty, life in prison. It had nothing to do with innocence or not innocence or guilty or not guilty. It had to do with mitigating that sentence. Because, back in those days, not that it was, 100 years ago, but just a few years ago, the death penalty was a real reality here in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. And so it was important that the lawyer who was handling the trial would have help from the second lawyer. So I signed the orders and the paperwork that we would have the two counsel for homicide cases. And we signed those papers and got those papers together before the American Bar Association signed off on theirs. So we were very proud of that.
Yes.
And I have to say, the criminal justice section, the Bar Association, they named an award after me. And so now, every year, it's a long name, the Honorable Frederica Massiah-Jackson Criminal Justice Award or something like that. But it really, in part, because of that mitigation counsel.
I didn't want you to forget that. That was so important. And you spearheaded that, so that's amazing. Are there any skills any soft skills that you think are important to have, aside from legal knowledge, that are important for judges?
Tell me what you mean by soft.
So, are there, like, well, obviously, we negotiate as lawyers, but, like, political skills, the ability to bring people together, as the president judge, for example, people may not know, lay people may not know that there are different branches of the FJD who may or may not talk to each other. How you made them do that, though?
We did.
How did you do that?
Everybody sit at the table
Yeah.
and talk. You know.
Yeah.
I think the whole focus of being non-confrontational was very important. Let
Yeah.
people get it out, you know, whatever it is that's on their mind. And that's something we do on civil cases because we're trying to negotiate a settlement rather than trial. You know, let the lawyers say what's on their mind. We bring them in the back in the conference room and talk about it. And as president judge, we would have, and as chair of the administrative governing board, we sit around the table, the administrative judges of each division, the supervising judges, they talk to each other, trying to work it out. And also working with my court administrators. I think I mentioned, I was very fortunate. I had Joe Chiron as the court administrator, Dave Lawrence as deputy court administrator, Joe Evers as prothonotary, and those three men and I worked very well together. When I was first elected as president judge, Joe Chiron, who's Republican, and I, who Democrat, we visited every one of the city council people, for example. So they saw that we were working together within the courts. And then when we had a budget hearing, we could go to the hearing, you know, in city council chambers, and they knew that we were working together, whether they were R or D, you know, we were all working together. So I think when you speak of soft skills, that was it, the idea that we could work together, at least agree to disagree, perhaps, but we also tried to find common ground. And that was something you do as a judge, we do as a leader of a large organization of the First Judicial District, and somehow it all came together.
Do you have any advice, or what advice would you have for an aspiring judge who's thinking about running for judge? Do you have any words of wisdom?
I would just say it's harder than it looks. It's, you know, I think I was like many people. I would watch TV shows and, you know, Law and Order or Perry Mason, whatever, you know, generation of TV shows. And there's some very good ones, but it's not like what you see on TV. The judge does not just, you know, bang their gavel and everything falls in the, you have to work hard. I have 2 children. My son was still in diapers when I was elected.
Wow.
My daughter was maybe 3 or 4 years old, so she was a little more advanced. So, and my husband, so I had to come home at night. I fixed dinner for everybody when we worked with them to get them in bed, and then I started doing my judge work.
Wow.
You know, I had to do my research on my dining room table. We didn't always have computers, you know, a lot of it was just making Xeroxes during the day and bringing the hard copies at night to read the case law. But I think the most important thing for a new judge, because this is something that develops also, is to realize that the lawyers are counting on you to be on time with your opinions, be on time with your memos, be up to date in the courtroom. So the judge needs to know the law better than the lawyers. You know, I've seen lawyers who will say, "Judge, the cases say X." And I'm thinking to myself, that's not the cases I read. You know? So I said, "Oh, really?" "Oh, yeah." I said, "You do this for me," because I'm on the record, you know.
Yes.
I said, "You bring me a short memo about X, and when you bring that to me, then maybe I'll let this witness testify." I never get the memo, okay?
Yes.
Because there is no such memo,
Right.
you know? And, you know, so on the record, I don't want to say, don't do it, or you're wrong.
Right.
I just say, you bring me a memo, and I can tell you, you know. So the judge has to be up to par. Can't rely just on law clerks, you know. The judge has to be working hard to be anticipating whatever's going to come up.
That's the other thing that the lawyers said about you.
Oh,
You said,
really?
well, you were known for being able to settle cases.
Yes.
Because you knew the law. The lawyers knew that you knew the law, so they came prepared.
Okay,
always.
good. Yes, that was me.
And that you were they knew what they were going to encounter in your room. You were going to be on time. You were going to be on top of the law, so that's why their case is settled. And that you have very few appeals.
That is true. That is true.
So that's an amazing compliment.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you. I'd
yeah.
forgotten all of that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You won't toot your own horn, so that's my job.
Thank you.
Sure. Your Honor, is there anything else that you'd like to say, maybe to aspiring law students? What do you think law students should be doing to prepare themselves for practicing?
Some of the same things that we've just talked about. Those law students, they have to get through law school. You know, read whatever they've been told to read, write whatever they have to write, study very, very diligently for the bar exam. Take those bar review classes. Don't think you can do it on your own. And if there's an issue as far as costs, do whatever you can to find someone, even to a parent or relative, to lend you the money. Take those bar review classes. And then once you pass the bar, once you have you're in practice, whether you're in an office, you know, it could be a city office, you know, whether it's civil or criminal, city solicitor or DA. It could be a county level, it could be federal job, it could be a private law firm, it could be a big firm or small. Just be reading, be prepared, be knowledgeable, so that whatever is asked of that new lawyer, they're ready. And so they have to start those practices while they're in law school, to be ready, be prepared.
Thank you. Judge Frederica, Massiah-Jackson, it has been my honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This has been very, very enlightening for me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.